This is Shalom World Podcast.
Welcome to Voyage. This is a podcast where we take you to the world of the Apocalypse of John. This is the book of Revelation. I am your host, Frances Hogan. We are continuing in chapter 18, and I spoke to you the last time about the traders. The two groups that were mourning the death of Babylon were the ones that actually benefited from it. So we had the 10 horns of the antichrist, the 10 kings. They were the first to mourn because their power base is gone. And then you had the traders with all their luxury goods, and it reflected society that was very advanced economically, and they were only mourning the fact that there was collapse in their trade. So I want to pick up from verse 14. So this is Revelation 18:14. All the fruits you set your hearts on have failed you, gone forever, never to return is your life of magnificence and ease. So here you have the sic transit gloria mundi. This is the way the glory of the earth just simply disappears like a flash. You can accumulate all the goods you like and all the wonderful artworks that you like. You have to leave them all behind. And even if you have a life of glory and ease and an eternity of hell, what is the point? Absolutely, what is the point? And so verse 15 says, the traders who had made a fortune out of her. Now I want you to notice that this made a fortune out of her is going to be repeated over and over. The traders who had made a fortune out of her will be standing at a safe distance, just as the 10 kings stood at a safe distance, from fear of her agony, mourning and weeping. And they will be saying the same thing again. Mourn, mourn for this great city, for all the linen and the purple and the scarlet. Notice the luxuries that you wore, for all your finery, for all the gold and the jewels and the pearls. Your riches are all destroyed in a single hour. Everything is luxury. Nothing is for the ordinary everyday life. The third group that really mourn the death of this city comes in verse 17 and 18. All the captains and the seafaring men, the sailors and all those who made a living from the sea will be keeping a safe distance, watching the smoke as she burns and crying out, has there ever been a city as great as this? They will throw dust on their heads and they will say with tears and groans, mourn, mourn for this great city whose lavish living has made a fortune for every owner of a sea-going ship. Notice, these people all made fortunes out of the system, and they agreed with this system absolutely because they had benefited so much from it, and yet it all disappears in 1 hour. So what you're looking at there is power collapse on the part of the 10 kings and economic collapse on the part of all the others. Now, one of the things that is coming to us in the not too distant future is economic collapse. And we'll all have a chance to mourn and realize what a luxurious life we have all been living, because we've been living way beyond what is necessary for living on a day-to-day basis. And so if the Lord doesn't pull this from us, we are never going to look up. We are never going to turn our eyes towards heaven. We're never going to remember what we had before. And the amazing thing is that in this country, in Ireland, we truly worshipped and praised God when we were hungry and poor. But when we became rich, no, there is loss of faith. It's really sad. But it's the thing you find everywhere. So they have all of this problem. And today we have the billionaire problem, as I said before, that the hand of a few people hold all the money of the world. There are even individuals who could solve the entire economic problems of an entire country. It's really, really sad what's happening. So it's time for our system to collapse because it is so unbalanced. The rich have everything, the poor have nothing. And yet all the sin that actually goes with such a system. So from verse 20 to 24, we change completely. It's all the people who benefited from this awful system that are in mourning. But there are other people who are rejoicing. And this is the rejoicing in heaven. And you know that in the book of Revelation, there's two levels for heaven. one is the eternal home and the other is the heaven that is the church. So we're going to see that the church triumphant and the church pilgrim on the earth are both going to rejoice together that this system has been pulled down, and then the kingdom of God can be established in chapter 19. So from verse 20, now heaven, celebrate her downfall. Why do I say people on earth as well? Because it's all you saints and all you apostles and all you prophets. Now, the word apostles there is the only reference to apostles in the entire book of Revelation. So whether John is speaking about new generations of apostles, I don't know. But it's the only mention of apostles here. We do know about prophets in the early church, yes, certainly. And we've had prophets ever since as well. So it's time for you to celebrate. God has given judgment for you against her. Now, I've given you that text in Daniel frequently, so I won't give it to you again, that the judgment of God was in favor of the saints against the beast. Okay, so this means that the church that has been mowed down, has been persecuted, has been crucified, it can now rise up again. Okay, so verse 21 says, then a powerful angel picked up a boulder like a great millstone, and as he hurled it into the sea, he said, this is how the great city of Babylon is going to be hurled down, never to be seen again. So we first of all have the command for the church to begin to relax and to celebrate, and then we're going to see the fall of Babylon from another angle. Okay, judgment has been given in favor of the saints. So we now know for certain what the future of the evil trinity is, and we're going to see that in chapters 20 and 21. So everybody can now relax because what was written in Revelation 11:18 has now happened. The time has come for God to destroy the destroyers of the earth. And the destroyers of the earth was that evil trinity and the whole wicked system that they actually set up. So it is time, therefore, to give thanks to God. And there is a most wonderful prayer of thanksgiving that fits this text very well in Isaiah 25. And I want to read it for you. And it's given in the context of God having passed sentence on the wicked. Lord, you are my God. I extol you. I praise your name. For you have carried out your excellent design, long planned, trustworthy, and true. For you have made the town a heap of stones, the fortified city a ruin. The citadel of the proud is a citadel no longer. It will never be rebuilt. This is exactly what John is saying here. Hence, a mighty people gives you glory. The city of pitiless nations holds you in awe. For you are a refuge for the poor, a refuge for the needy in distress, a shelter in the storm, a shade from the heat, while the breath of pitiless men is like a winter storm. Like drought in a dry land, you will repress the clamour of the proud. Like heat by the shadow of a cloud, the singing of the despots will be subdued. And immediately after that, John of the Old Testament is what I call Isaiah. So that's why I'm inclined to call him John. He gives the most incredible sequence to this prayer of thanksgiving. So he's saying that the wicked citadel has been pulled down. It'll never be rebuilt. But what does he say next? This is what he says. On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will prepare for all peoples a banquet of rich food, a banquet of fine wines, of food rich and juicy, of fine strained wines. On this mountain he will remove the mourning veil covering all peoples and the shroud enwrapping all nations. He will destroy death forever. That's exactly where we're going in chapter 19 and 20. Exactly. The Lord will wipe away the tears from every cheek. He will take away the people's shame everywhere on earth. The church has been purified. The people of Israel have been purified. They're all ready for the new heavens and the new earth. For the Lord has said so. On that day it will be said, see, this is our God in whom we hoped for salvation. The Lord is the one in whom we hope. We exult and we rejoice that he has saved us. For the hand of the Lord is on this mountain. It's absolutely wonderful. So it's time for the reign of the Lord. Now, that was fulfilled quite literally in the destruction of Jerusalem and the church going out, because Jesus in his passion and death and resurrection, gave us the new banquet, and he reigns in the Eucharist. And here in chapter 19, we're going to the supper of the Lamb, and we're going straight into the new stage of church being absolutely living in union with God. It's a very, very wonderful thing altogether. So the thanksgiving and the praise of the church is not for the death of the wicked, it's for the triumph of God. And the thanksgiving is saying to the Lord, we just are so happy that your plan is that you will reign on the earth and that this evil reign is finished. Okay. So the thanksgiving is actually very important. And then we're told about this great millstone. It was like a millstone being thrown into the sea, this death. Well, in the ancient world, one of the ways to execute a criminal was to put a stone around their neck and make them sink into the sea. And Jesus said that is the execution for those who conduct child abuse, anyone who destroys the little ones, okay? And so this is the language for the destruction of Babylon. And so verses 22 and 23 gives us back the language of the prophets in speaking about the final death of this terrible system. Never again in you, Babylon, will be heard the song of harpists and minstrels, the music of flute and trumpet. Never again will craftsmen of every skill be found, or the sound of the mill be heard. Never again will shine the light of the lamp. Never again will be heard the voices of bridegroom and bride. Your traders were the princes of the earth, and all the nations were under your spell. Now, that's all the language of the prophets. There's no point in me reading it. It's all here. What John has done is he has synthesized what the prophets were saying, and he's saying this is the final end of this terrifying system. And then he adds something in verse 24. He says, because in her you will find the blood of prophets and saints and all the blood that was ever shed on the earth. That's very, very interesting. So all the blood that was ever shed on the earth. I want to take you to a text in Matthew's Gospel in chapter 23. I told you already that this is the punishment for the final empire, the eighth one, the empire of the antichrist. And so the abuse of the human beings and the torture of God's people right through all of the seven empires comes to its peak in the eighth empire. And the eighth empire has to pay for the evil that Satan has done upon the earth in all of the eight empires. So this is what Jesus said about Jerusalem in his day, when Jerusalem had reached the peak of its experience and had rejected the Son of God, that all the sins of all the people for that 1,500 years was going to be paid for in the judgment of Jerusalem. Now, there had been judgments before, but they were partial. And this was the final one when Jerusalem was actually destroyed and the people were eliminated from the land altogether. This is what he said in Matthew 23 from verses 33 to 36. Serpents, you see, human beings under the serpent become serpent-like. You become like what you worship. Serpents, he said, brood of vipers, how can you escape being condemned to hell? This is why I, in my turn, I'm sending you prophets and wise men and scribes. Some you will slaughter and crucify. Some you will scourge in your synagogues and hunt from town to town. And so you will draw down on yourselves the blood of every man that has been shed on the earth, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zachariah, son of Barachiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. I tell you solemnly, all of this will recoil on this generation. And then he mourned the death of Jerusalem that was going to come 40 years after his death. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, he said, you that kill the prophets and stone those who are sent to you. How often have I longed to gather your children as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you refused. So be it. In other words, heaven says, this is what you want, this is what you get. Your house will be left desolate to you. For I promise you shall not see me until you say, Baruch haba Bashem Adonai. Blessings on him who comes in the name of the Lord. Just as Jerusalem had to pay for all the sins of Israel from the beginning to the very end, so this final empire has to pay for all the sins of all the empires, right up to and including the very end. That is the millstone thrown into the sea. Finite. This is it. It's all over. God has the victory. And we will see the wonderful, wonderful consequences of this when we go into chapter 19. Thank you for listening. Slán agus beannacht dé live. Goodbye. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us today. We'd like to hear what you thought of today's session. Share your feedback with us at podcast@shalomworld.org. You can motivate and support us today. shalomworld.org/donate. Visit shalomworld.org for more information about Shalom World podcasts. To get the latest updates, make sure you follow us on Instagram at Shalom World Podcasts. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Shalom World Podcasts is now available on all online platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and others.